welcome to the Mindfulness Broadcast. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Theo. Today, I wanted to talk about a question that I find is something that I use a lot in my personal life and in my work with individuals and also in groups. And it's a question that I'm going to request that you write down. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time, like 15 seconds, in order to get a pen and a piece of paper. Hopefully you have one nearby, or maybe you can just memorize it. How about that? So here's the question. The question is, what else is true? I'll repeat that. What else is true? So I learned this question. Jeff and I, when we were having coffee yesterday, I was mentioning that I studied with Tara Brach. And Tara Brach was actually the person that introduced this question to me in some of the teachings that she provided. And the reason that this question is so powerful and the reason that it's so rooted in mindfulness is that it's actually a way that we can harness our awareness, which is really what we're doing when we're practicing mindfulness, right? We're harnessing the power of our own awareness in order to start to get more aware of what it is that we're experiencing in the moment. And the reason that this question came up for me as something I wanted to speak about today is that I was recently with my sister and her family up in Seattle, and I have a 17-year-old nephew, and this was just after we got news that Charlie Kirk had been murdered. And there was a big discussion, and my 17-year-old nephew, there's a lot of feelings. There's a sense of concern and overwhelm, and there's a lot going on in the world. And so, the idea of what else is true became really um, helpful for me to both recall and introduce, because we as humans often get caught in a cycle of focusing on things that are negative, that are overwhelming. And if we don't have this practice of mindfulness, it can be really hard to get ourselves out of these cycles. So we're harnessing this power of awareness. We're asking ourselves the question, what else is true? And in doing so, we are essentially allowing ourselves, both through this type of question, but also through our mindfulness practice in general, to expand our window of tolerance, to build our resiliency in the face of these pretty big challenges. And it doesn't have to relate, these challenges don't have to relate to things that are going on in culture or politics or the economy. They can also relate to someone who's dealing with a lot of physical pain or someone who's experiencing, a divorce or the death of a loved one or social anxiety. The key to this question, what else is true, is that we have this awareness and this ability to essentially change channels. So the channel analogy is kind of the easiest way that I can explain, like when we have our minds and the narrative, the voices in our head focused on something that has these negative characteristics, that is overwhelming, that causes us fear and anxiety, we have the ability to ask this question and to realize that there are other things that are true, that we can find refuge in something other than where our mind wants to take us, right? So we're essentially giving ourselves more agency within our own experience through the mindfulness practice. And if we can use this simple question, what else is true, we're then able to say, like, okay, there are other channels that I can choose right now. I have this ability to move from the fact that there's a lot of turmoil in our political world and violence and this kind of thing, to the fact that, like, okay, I'm safe in my home right now. I have food in my fridge, or I have friends who I love, and there are still things that I can do to affect change if I choose to. There's all this, there's a whole host, or it could simply be, and this is another, really a helpful thing that, we've already covered, and I know Tiffany has covered in past classes. It could just simply be that I can just focus on the sensation of my breath coming in and going out. And that is true. It's true that there are sensations that I can tune into as a different channel that allow me refuge from the things that my brain wants to try and focus on. So that's really kind of in some ways, the foundational layer of how mindfulness can be useful, um, at least in my experience. So, so that's what I'm hoping that you can take away today, is just this question, what else is true? And this ability to shift, to change channels from what is basically just like this constant barrage of thoughts that we know from all the research is really distorted and biased and only really aimed at helping us to survive and pass our genes on. It's a pretty limited set of objectives, and we need to harness this power of awareness. We need to harness our mindfulness practice in order to build that resiliency and to have more refuge from stormy weather. So I'm going to invite you all into a short practice in order to test this out and see how it goes for you. Um, and hopefully you'll find some proof in the pudding, even in just this short little session. So what I'd like you to do is I would like you to initially just notice where you are. Hopefully you're in a comfortable position. If you're not, go ahead and get yourself in a comfortable position. Um, if you're seated, that's probably going to be better. And just take in the room where you are. Right. Sometimes even just doing that is answering the question, what else is true? What else is true is I'm in my basement right now. So I'm in my basement. There's a window right here. There's some looks like Christmas lights that my kids strung up to make the room more festive. I noticed some papers on my desk. Right. So whatever is going on for you, just notice where you are. Place yourself in time and space. And then if it feels comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes. And if that doesn't feel comfortable, you can have your eyes half open, kind of like drowsy eyes with a soft focus just in front of you. And then gonna have you take 2 intentional deep breaths. We're gonna breathe into the belly, and then we're gonna hold, and then we're gonna release for about 5 seconds longer than our inhale. So breathing into the belly, full breath, hold, and then release, long and slow. Extend that exhale, keep extending, and then hold, and then breathing into the belly again. Hold, and then one more prolonged exhale all the way out. And then let the breath return to its natural state. Let it settle. And just notice, even in those two breaths, if there's been any settling, you've felt any sense of calm from where you started. And if so, where do you feel that? Maybe you can bring your attention to the pressure that you feel underneath you. Notice the stability of being held in place by gravity and what that pressure actually means. You're stable. And now I'm going to invite you to consider a circumstance in your own life. And ideally, it's going to be a circumstance that rates somewhere between a 3 and a 5 on a scale of intensity of 0 to 10. So something that's challenging, something that maybe has some negative connotations, could be some anxiety you're feeling about a specific circumstance in your own life, could be something in the news, could be a pain that you're experiencing in your body. And I just want you to hold that in your mind right now. And as best you can, be curious about it. Allow it to appear almost as if it's an object floating in space, and you're just observing it with curiosity. Maybe it's a little far away so that it doesn't overwhelm you. And then I want you to ask the question, what else is true? And as you ask that question, I'm going to offer you some options. Could be true that you can sense the way that the breath is moving in and out of your body right now. To tune into that channel and just notice the simple elegance of breathing and acknowledge that you aren't actually choosing to breathe, that breathing is just happening. And that's somewhat miraculous. This is all just happening. Or you could shift your attention to something really positive in your life. The fact that you have a warm place to sleep, or a job, or someone that you love and that loves you. Whatever it is that you choose, I just want you to, as best you can, focus your full awareness on this other object of consciousness. And again, being curious and non judgmental, just being open to this other channel that you've chosen. And if there are other thoughts or nagging sensations, that's okay. Just gently return your awareness to your chosen object of consciousness. That is the practice of mindfulness, is to return and then notice that we've become distracted and then return again. Slowly training our minds like the puppy dog that it is back to this place of refuge. So I'm going to invite you to slowly return to the space where you are. You can move your body, you can stretch, you can wiggle your fingers and your toes, and then open your eyes. I'm hopeful that that was useful for y'all. Um, and please remember that question: what else is true?